relationship that you've been broken up with 3 times. You're still going strong.
Oh yeah.
Respect. Sam, you've been married for how many years?
Going on 8.
Okay. I'm in my second marriage. Been going for about 3 years. Learned a lot of lessons. Yusef, you've been in your relationship with your girl for how long?
8 years.
So for a minute. All right, so we got some seasoned vets here. Colt,
Never had a girlfriend.
how are the prostitutes doing?
Oh, they're doing okay. 3 so far.
All right, let's go, man. Slow clap. That's what you got to do, bro. Whatever it takes.
Woo!
Necessary, dude. Cameron, where you at, man? You got a...
Was married 15 years, just recently divorced. Got a new girl. It's great.
Awesome, man. 15 years. That
15
is...
years.
That's a stretch of territory, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler, I think you are the patriarch for this fire right now in terms of time in the marriage.
Married 12, with
12.
her 15, known her for 30.
30 years?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's really dope.
So
Yeah.
you guys have had
We were kids.
15 years together in a relationship, but you knew her for 15 years prior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's
All right,
dope.
man.
Don't
So
think
we're
I
gonna-
got all the answers, but
No, we're leaning heavily on you, bro. Because the rest of us are just making shit up.
Yeah,
And this is-
winging it.
For the record, this is the non-expert show. We don't believe in experts. Experts are liars to us. COVID was an example of that. The food pyramid, we could go on and on, all the things that the experts had right. In fact, I was listening to this thing on Joe Rogan not long ago, and I can't remember who his guest was, but his guest was talking about how they had this technology in their company that was going to kick ass. Another company came in and wanted, a bigger company wanted to come in and buy it. And they didn't want to sell it. And the bigger company said, if you don't sell it to us, we're going to fabricate a whole bunch of statistics and studies that show that your product is ass. So that's about how much interest I have in what the experts have to say nowadays. They can tell me the sky's purple all day long, but if it's blue, I'm just going to kind of go with what I see.
No doubt.
And as men, when we sit around the fire, one of the things I encourage everybody here to do is to speak with some sense of gravity, some sense of authority. Like, speak your opinion like you mean it, and not like we're fishing around for some sort of validation from the quote-unquote experts. So this is the expert non-expert show where we just share our thoughts on life. And we're going to jump into it. So, okay, Hollywood, the world, society, and even females that buy into this sort of like mindset have this whole idea that you get married and it's happily ever after, right? And a lot of us guys, I think, buy into that as well. We think, hey, if we can just get to that point where we find the right person, that our lives are going to be put together and we can move on with our lives and we can finally be happy and be finally like complete, so to speak. And with a divorce rate that's somewhere in the, last I heard the divorce rate, again, speaking as a non-expert, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 70% for the newer generations right now. I don't know how accurate that is. That's just something I heard, but it seems to make sense because most people I know are getting divorced or have been divorced, myself included. It seems like we're just getting set up for failure. And one of the biggest issues is just this disconnect that's going on between men and women right now. Like the inability to somehow connect, understand each other, to find common ground, to find a relationship that's actually meaningful and that you can work on long term. 70% of the divorces are actually instigated by women right now. So women are leaving marriages, they're checking out, they're not satisfied, they're not happy. So one of the things that I've seen, the biggest issue, I noticed this in my first marriage, the biggest contrast I think between my first marriage and this marriage, in terms of the dynamics, not in terms of character of the personality, is the ability to communicate. Like I have a much different way of communicating with my wife now than I did with my first wife. So communication is what I consider one of the biggest issues in relationships. Men trying to communicate the way men communicate, women trying to communicate the way women communicate, and a lack of connection and all of that. So with that, if you guys agree or disagree, you're welcome to riff off of that. But what are your guys's, first of all, like just go around, anybody like got any thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on this disconnect right now in the society we live in between men and women?
A lot of simps, man. A lot of people who they finally get the girl and they're like, man, I got her, now I can't let her go. And then they just bend to their every will and they don't set boundaries. And then it just starts off pretty bad if you start in that direction.
I found one of the things that's most helpful is, you know, I went a lot of years in my life where I was not an advocate of therapy. I thought therapy was for broken people. I thought it was only for people that had messed up marriages or messed up lives or had made huge mistakes and these sort of things. And, you know, my wife and I got to a place in our marriage where we sat down face to face and we said, should we get divorced? Should we separate? This is about 10 years in, by the way, to our marriage. And I had known her for a long, long time. And so, we finally made the commitment to do therapy. We sit down with our therapist. One of the very first things he says is, how do you guys communicate? And we said very, very ineffectively. And I told him, I said, admittedly, I am a top 1% communicator in my business and career, and I'm a bottom 1% communicator in my marriage. And so it wasn't until he drew it back to the way that our parents communicated with us that we could actually understand the reason why we communicate and we listen the way that we do. And so for my wife, at least, for her growing up, it was that her parents never talked about anything. They never had the birds and the bees chat. They never talked about hard things. If there was something going on in the family dynamic, they would just suppress it. They'd hide it under the rug. They wouldn't talk about it. And so how does that manifest in my wife now? Well, she just doesn't like to talk about hard things. For me, my mom would say, hey, son, you can come talk to me about anything. And the moment I did, in the religion I was raised in, I get reprimanded. So when I would actually open up and tell her, she'd be like, you're grounded, that's not okay, you're in trouble. And so how does that manifest as an adult? Well, I don't want to communicate to a female what I'm going through because the way I was raised, I'm thinking she's going to react the same way that my mother reacted. And so it wasn't until we understood that it kind of unlocked us to be able to be like, okay, that is what it is. We're going to communicate the way that we do. Now that we understand that as a friend, we can actually just sit down and have a productive discussion.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, you know, they often say that kids or adults typically repeat what you saw in your childhood. And that tends to be true. So what you're saying is true. But to add to what Adam said about communication and the disconnect between the man and the woman, you kind of got to scale everything back, because I think right now there's a disconnect with just a human being being a human being first. And so that kind of translates to woman and man and how they connect to that woman and man that they looking at in the mirror. Sometimes the language that you use towards yourself, you tend to reflect that same language on everybody else. So people will go, women and men, and I use that term loosely because typically I try to say that male and female, because not everybody extends to a woman and a man. That's like a level. And so once you set that, anyway, but back to this, like when you look in the mirror, most people can't connect to the person that they looking at in the mirror first. So how then, if you can't connect to the person that you're looking at in the mirror, how then do you connect to your spouse? Or how then do you connect to just civilization in and of itself? So I see it often right now. I see that women are confused. Like right now, like literally women are confused. They have created this shattered mirror where people walk up to the mirror and they have all of these pieces in this mirror and can't really even see themselves. So all of these people.
You said women created it.
No. I said society has created this. You know what I mean? And because of that mirror being cracked, so it's hard for people to see, it's difficult for people to see who it is that they looking at in the mirror. So right now, like, look at how they have made this gray area between male and female now. It's difficult for females to choose now, like exactly what line they fall in. It's the same way with the male.
When you say
They have,
who is the they though? That's
that, I mean, you can name media, you can name propaganda, You can name, I mean, any number of things. Beauty, the beauty segment of the world, uh, uh, just every single thing. I was just watching a commercial about Maybelline. Maybelline, a product that is specifically geared towards making the woman look beautiful. Now they have thrown a guy on this commercial. So now in my head, I'm saying like, so what's the point in the commercial now?
I guess we got to start using Maybelline, man.
That's not fair though. But that's not fair. You're doing a society an injustice right now.
But don't you feel like you have to blame the individual? You can't just always revert back. At this point, where we are, you can't just keep going back to what they push and an agenda that they push on us. It's up to the individual to say yes, no, and to accept it or not, right?
No doubt.
So just like how a lot of guys have gone away from Budweiser. Budweiser done, Disney done, because people, the individuals are stepping up to say no. We're
No
not
doubt.
tolerating
No
this,
doubt.
Right? Parents all over the country are saying no to boys identifying as girls and playing sports against girls, right? So I think it's up to the individual now, because we already know what is being pushed out there, right? And it's being pushed consistently, as you just stated. So, you know, I think we have to take onus on ourselves at this point in time to start making change and doing what you know is right. And then I think from that point, our children are going to understand, and then it'll grow from there.
So we have this situation, in my opinion, where we have a lot of very unhealthy people looking for a relationship to make them healthy. Like this is one of the biggest issues, is two people that are busted, screwed up, haven't done this self-work, haven't looked in the mirror and learned even how to communicate with themselves, have no self-awareness.
Right.
Then they're rolling into this relationship with these expectations that the other person is going to somehow fill these gaps that you have. And it automatically sets that relationship up for failure. And this is something I can't stress enough to people. Like if you want the chance, because the vast majority of marriages right now are falling apart, marriage is not working in Western society right now. If you want a chance at having a healthy long-term monogamous relationship, the first step is not only you becoming healthy and understanding who you are, putting in the work, but finding somebody else who has done the same thing. And now I think you actually have a chance. I think it's pretty hard. Most people don't do the work that's required for self-awareness, the work that's required for like really leveling yourself up so that you can move into a relationship as a healthy contributor to that relationship. So I think this is something that we're up against. And so how do you deal with a marriage where one or both people are unhealthy in the relationship in terms of their ability to communicate with each other? Because this is an issue. What is the recommendation?
Well, you know, people. Oh, go ahead. Anybody else?
If you have one individual that is willing, right? So if you recognize the flaws that you have, right, and then I think if you address those things, then the person that you're with has to be willing to do the same, right? So if I communicate with you without attacking you and making you feel bad about yourself, like pretty much constructive criticism. If I'm giving you constructive criticism as well as I'm allowing you to do the same for me, right? No one starts at point Z. I just think that, you know, if you have somebody that's willing, you can grow together, you know, and you guys can push each other, because I guess, you know what I mean? Like I'm assuming that if you're like in a toxic relationship, but you recognize that it's toxic and you see what you want to be and you see what you can be, I think you have to be willing to change. And if you're willing to communicate and accept the fact that we need to change, I think that has to be a start. It's just kind of self-awareness, and then, you know, being able to communicate with your spouse, you know, what we need to work on, and seeing how receptive they are to it.
You know, I think that to piggyback off of what you said, I think we were having this conversation last night, and one of the things that has really stuck out to me now having a 15-year relationship, a marriage, right? And now being in a new relationship as a divorced man, the thing that stuck out to me is us as men are very egotistical, right? Our ego clouds a lot of our decision making, our judgment, how we act, how we speak, things like that. And what I've learned in the relationship I'm in now is, as I've taken my ego out of the situation, right? Which is tough. I mean, all alpha males here, all men who are leaders, you have to remove your ego from the situation. And when you do that, you allow authenticity to replace your ego. And in communication, I've learned and I've seen that, like, as I've removed my ego, my true self has then come out. My communication levels increase. My empathy increases. What do women need? They need someone who is empathetic, someone who will listen to them, someone who will take the time to understand what they're saying, feel what they're saying, and then not fix the problem, support the answer or the result, right? And so as I've taken that time, I was telling Tyler this last night, I said my ego has been the killer of my authenticity. And every time I've been authentic in my life, in a relationship, it's blossomed, it's flourished. And every time I've allowed my ego to get in the way of that relationship or that communication, it's a slippery slope and it's gone downhill. And in my marriage that I had, that was exactly what happened. I allowed my ego to get in the way. She allowed her pride to get in the way, right? And so we clashed. We weren't allowing our true selves to connect and to be there for each other. And so I think just what you were saying, Stone, if you can take a step back and take some accountability for who you are as an individual, as you communicate with your spouse in your marriage, and just remove your ego and remove the pride from the situation and be your authentic self with one another, now communication becomes real. Communication is vulnerable. Communication is supportive. Communication is accountable. And when you have those components to communication, all of a sudden you go from hearing what the person says to really listening to what they say. And I think that's super important as you grow together, right? That if you can remove the ego, if you can remove the pride, if you can remove all the selfishness from the communication and actually listen and truly try to empathize with that human being, now there becomes a connection, and that allows you to strengthen and grow, right? It creates a foundation for you to put something on and grow it.
I think there's one that you missed that I want to build on, which is when you remove your ego, you are now able to accept feedback and criticism when you need to step your shit up, right? So one of the things that we as men tend to do is when our wife or significant other says, hey, I'm seeing something and it's not working for me, we tend to get defensive. Our ego gets in the way. We say, what the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean I'm not good at? What do you mean I'm working too much? What do you mean I'm not present? What do you mean you want me to put my phone away? Whatever it is, these are mine, okay? But when you can do that, what I tend to like to do is try to model certain behavior to train my wife and convince her that it's good, okay? So in this case, it would be, my wife gets tired of me saying, how can I be better? What feedback do you have for me? And by the way, we do this for everything, including after we have an intimate night together. Hey, what did you like about that? What didn't you like? What feedback do you have for me? And you do that enough and you receive that feedback with grace and humility, then when you start to provide feedback back to her, how does she receive it? Well, she goes, I know how you do it, so thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that, and I can improve and I can be better. And I think feedback is really what, as part of communication, is what makes marriages really strong.
Yo, I want to jam on that for a second because I think that's super important, and I know you guys have something to say, Stone, but I think it's, you guys have probably all heard this, like, pick your battles wisely, right? And there's some sense in that. I think that makes, I think I can kind of get my mind around that. But I also think what you're saying is the better advice is over communicate. One of the issues that I noticed, like in my first marriage, is that for the sake of keeping the peace, I would just brush things under the rug, right? Like I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't want to cause a fight. I didn't want to get into it. So I would just try and bury stuff that I wasn't okay with, like I wasn't good for me. And it wasn't good for our relationship. And I would do that. And eventually I got to a point, you know, you're down in this rabbit hole where you've built up a lot of resentment. You built up a lot of frustration, but not only that, now you're at a point where this behavior has become habitual and it's been accepted. And you're okay with it now. Like, or at least from her perspective, it's okay because you haven't challenged it yet because you're trying to do this whole thing of picking your battles and be really careful. And I think one of the worst things that you can do is not communicate early on. Of course, you do it respectfully and you do it, like you mentioned, without ego or without emotion, where you're not angry about anything or you're not coming at them upset. You're coming at them for, hey, this is how this made me feel. This is why I'm feeling this way. But I just think it's one of those things that so many couples do this is to try to keep the peace, they try to bury it. And then they find themselves 5 years down the road in a really toxic relationship that they've.
You had a phrase for it. When people put stuff off, or you just kind of bury the emotion and you just kind of forget about it and hope that it changes, or you just accept it. You literally had a phrase for it. My bad.
It's like what Sam said, it was a simp. Probably that's a.
No, it was
Like fetal rep syndrome.
it was something else.
I think about it. I mean, I think about it like a balloon, right? So you guys ever, like for a party, use a helium machine with a balloon? It's like you start filling up that balloon, and if you just talk about it, you can actually let the air out of the balloon. If you keep burying it, you keep filling it with helium, keep filling it. What happens if you just keep a balloon on there and keep filling it with helium? Well, eventually it pops, right? And it's the same thing you're talking about is if you keep burying these things, that balloon keeps filling up, and one day it's going to come out, and it's going to be potentially irreversible damage on your marriage.
Let me just, I kind of want to say something, because you said something about the ego, men having egos. See, I think that even that, we have to kill that part of everything, because I approach life like I'm a student of knowledge. That's how I look at it. I'm just a student of knowledge. And the fact that I remain in a student's position throughout life keeps me humble.
Correct.
So even in my relationship, I really don't have ego. I don't walk around with ego because I know I don't know everything. So that kills whatever ego I could possibly have. That kills it dead. The fact that I know I don't know everything. So in a relationship right now, I just left the crib. My moms used to always tell me, when you love somebody, you never walk away from that person mad. You never go to bed with that person mad. You never do none of these things because you never want to leave that person in that way. So just now, when I just left the crib, coming out here, I said, I love you, mama. And I didn't hear her clearly. And then she said it louder. I said, you do realize why we do that, right? Because I want to continue to draw on these things within the relationship. You do know why we do that, right? And she said, yeah. I said, why? And she said, because you never want to leave somebody in that any way but in a loving way, like an angel. No matter how upset you are, no matter how frustrated you are, you know what I mean? Like, you have to make those type of things a habit. So the only reason I even said something was because, like, I don't even think that should be what are they saying? What's the word that they're starting to use for? I don't even think that should be
Like a stigma or a stereotype?
yeah, because, like, we're not supposed to have egos at all. Even as men, we're not supposed to have egos at all. All of the people that I feel like are men in my life that I look up to or that I revere as a man, I don't ever think that I felt like that they had egos. I just felt like that they were really confident people. You know what I mean? They were thoughtful people and considerate people. Those are not people that have egos.
So let me ask you
Mhm.
actually this question for everybody. Why is it that when you get around when we get around a bunch of other dudes, our egos kind of get placed to the side, but we don't do that when it comes to our women in our relationship? Like, if I see something I respect about you, Adam, right? The conversation that I'll have with you guys, it's always well thought out, right? I'm never going to attack you guys, and it's like even if you like even if you take my friends out of it, right? Just how I approach other people in general, but with our significant others, with the mother of our children, we treat our relationships as if they're super disposable all the time. All the time. Like they're just high school flings, but we're married to them. We literally are attached to these people for the rest of our lives, right? But when it comes to our homeboys, it's always mad respect when it comes to the conversation. Every single time. Even when we're being disrespectful, we're being respectful because we know the boundaries to cross and what not to cross. But when it comes once again to our significant others, we always treat them like I don't give a fuck. Well, do what you got to do then. Bye. Beat it.
I don't.
I know I don't.
I'm saying over the course of your life, I'm gonna say at some point in time, you never come at your wife where you just got so mad with you. I don't give a fuck.
No, I think I gave too much of a fuck. Like,
Well, I mean that's you. I have, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I have, and I know a ton of other guys who have had the attitude because of our ego, where I'm like, oh, do you then? Right? Bye.
like hands up, I'm done.
Man, like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Leave? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I think what you saying, Stone, like for real, I'm with you, son. I'm like totally with you on what you saying. I know exactly what you saying. Totally with you. There's a certain amount of tolerance that's supposed to survive a lifetime in a relationship. It's a lifetime of tolerance. And a lot of people use that tolerance up within a year, 2 years, 3 years of a relationship. The other person literally has no more tolerance. Like literally, I have run out of all of my patience, all of my tolerance. And that means that the person that drew that out is a very, very toxic person. And the only way you can elicit that type of response is that you are tapping on the borderline of a person losing the last of the tolerance that is supposed to be reserved for you for a lifetime. See, I don't know if it's even heartless when you say, I don't care, leave. I don't know if that's heartless because my goodness, my tanks of my tolerance, my tanks of dealing with this, my tanks of reserve for patience and love and care and concern, you just sat here and used it up within 4 years complaining this. I no longer have. So by the time I get to a point where I'm like, I don't care, it's not that I don't care, it's that you just use all my tolerance for this shit up. It's gone.
Wait, so I can relate to that, but let me push back on it from a different angle, all right? Because that makes sense. But let me push back on it from a different angle. So my wife, my first wife, when I got married, I was who I was. I showed up and I said, you're looking for a snack on the shelf, I'm Cheez-Its. Okay, whatever I am. This is me. I didn't present something false. I was like, here's the ingredients. This is what you're gonna get. Okay, right? And she got Cheez-Its. She picked that up off the shelf and she said, I want a bag of Cheez-Its, because that's what I was. Once we got married, that changed. Then it was Twizzlers, then it was Doritos, and her tolerance level was running out because I wasn't Doritos or I wasn't Twizzlers or I wasn't something else. Like I advertised exactly what I was. There weren't any skeletons in the closet. I wasn't hiding anything. However, the issue was that I was not changing to fit her whatever she thought that I was supposed to be. And this was a huge issue in the relationship because I tried to change. I kept trying to change from being Cheez-Its because I'd been so conditioned by family, by church, by society that my role as a man was basically to play this subservient role to the female energy. And this was one of the most destructive things that I could have done in that relationship, was basically be a little bitch or simp out in the relationship. Now, I didn't know what I didn't know. I don't look back on that younger version of myself and I'm not critical, because nobody told me this shit. There wasn't a damn person on the planet that said, look, this is what women tend to do. Women will marry you, they'll pick you up, and then they will start to fucking try and change you. And then their tolerance will wear out when you don't change and you don't become Doritos one day and Twizzlers the next day and whatever that is. They're gonna run out of patience. Nobody taught me that. So here's my question for you, because we're talking about ego and we're talking about taking accountability, and I agree with that. I think it starts with the man, absolutely. I'm going to push back a little bit though. I happen to think that ego is actually really, really important for men to have. I think it's really, really healthy. Yeah, I'm going to say why. I think it's important that you learn how to control it, and that's where it comes from self-awareness. But ego is what drives me to go kick ass in the world. If I didn't have an ego, I'd be a doormat. If I didn't have something that's like, this is what makes me a man, I'm not going to tolerate disrespect, I would be a weak ass person. This is something I learned from my first marriage. I learned that when I went into another marriage, I had to have some sense of who I was. Call that ego. I'm a king. All right. If I'm going into a marriage, I'm going to be treated like a fucking king.
But that's not
Like,
that's not an ego.
I
though,
think
to
it
say
is.
you're a king.
That's how I would define it, though. So we may have a difference of semantics. There may be semantics right now, but I would define that as ego. Like, I learned that my first marriage, I laid down. I was like trying to become the next snack that she thought I was supposed to become. And I spent the 8.5 years of my marriage trying very unsuccessfully to do that. And it never made her life better, and it never made my life better. So I went into the second marriage and I said, you know what? I know who I am now going into this marriage. And I'm not going to tolerate something that takes away from that. Like, if I get the slightest inkling that you are not willing to treat me like a king, now I'm going to treat you like a queen.
No doubt.
Okay?
No doubt.
I'm going to treat you like a queen. I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to make sure that, like, I take care of you and that I step up as a man to play that role. But that ego, when left unchecked, is destructive. But when you can control that, it becomes a very powerful force in your life, I think. And I think that's one thing that we need to combat this whole idea of this whole simp pandemic that's going on, where men are basically being neutered right out of the womb, because they got, most of these homes that these kids are growing up in are all female homes, or a single mom running the home. Often that's the case now. And you have a single mom that's basically conditioning her son from an early age to be a yes man for the feminine energy. So they roll out of out of their upbringing, and they're just looking for another mother to fill that spot. And they roll into this, and this woman that picks them up, she might be attracted to him initially, and she might be all hyped up on the idea of having a wedding and doing all this stuff and showing it off on social media, but she doesn't respect him. And she ends up dismissing this kid because he doesn't have any ego. He doesn't have any self-respect. He doesn't have anything that's like, no, this is who I am, and I require this in this relationship. So my question to you guys, I pose this, is we're talking about what we need to do as men to hold accountability, and I couldn't agree more. I think when you approach this with women, you need to step your emotions back. We need to be prepared to hear something that we may not want to hear, as long as it's done respectfully. I can't hear anything if it's with disrespect.
Sure.
You're talking with disrespect, I can't hear you. Like, it's just going to make me
No doubt.
mad. Because I do have an ego, which is I don't tolerate fucking disrespect. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're
Of
disrespect me, fuck that.
No
Like,
doubt.
I'm not going to talk to you. But if you can come to me and talk to me, you may tell me something I don't want to hear. I need to check that ego back there. I need to have it controlled. Now I can listen to that, and I can be like, yo, baby, let me take care of you better. I need to do better, because that's my job, is to step up. My question for you guys is, with that being said, we understand, I think we all agree on that. We all understand as men, that's our role. How do we as men hold our women accountable?
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Adam, let me ask you a question. Like, based on what you just said. So, you grew up with both your parents, and it seems like from all that you explained, that a stable household. Why do you think that going into your first marriage, she picked Cheez-Its, you were willing to be Cheez-Its, and then you were willing to conform in order to make her happy, even though you were raised by a strong guy, you had a positive male influence in your life?
That's a lot to kind of unpackage, but one, my dad wasn't much of a mentor. Now, I don't say that as any criticism of him. My dad didn't teach me much, as far as, like, he wasn't hands-on. He was a good dad. His presence was felt in the home. He was a disciplinarian. He kept us in line. And I have all the love in the world for my dad. But he didn't teach me anything. On the contrary, what I was constantly conditioned from family, and what I was constantly conditioned from church and from society, was that my role, as mentioned earlier, my role as a man was basically to serve my wife, to be a glorified lapdog for her, in a sense. And I really bought into that bullshit. Like, I really thought, I got to be the bigger man. I got to bury the hatchet. And I spent this enormous amount of energy and time trying to change who I was. And I'm going to share this as a personal experience. And I hope I don't get emotional on this, but I had this experience where I spent the majority of that marriage trying to change my stripes, so to speak, trying to change from Cheez-Its into Doritos or whatever else. And it didn't work. And when we finally got a divorce, which I didn't instigate, she instigated it, I was a complete wreck. And not only was I a wreck, like with my identity, and we were talking Tyler, about this on your podcast a little bit, I was having something of a faith crisis. Now, I didn't distance myself from God. I was connected. I talked to God every day, but I was fucking angry, dude. And one of the reasons that I was angry with God is because I said, God, I turned to you for 8.5 years in that marriage to change me so that I could be what she needed me to be as her husband. I prayed to you, I fasted to you, I read books, we went to counseling, I did everything that I fucking knew how to do as a human. And I'm not saying I was perfect, I was far from it, but I know that my effort was genuine and I would have never worked harder at anything in my life. I can say that with certainty. And it didn't work. What the fuck is that all about? I know in my mind, I know you want us to be married, you want us to work this out, and it didn't work. And for months after my divorce, I think it was almost a year after my divorce, I harbored this frustration with God about that he didn't help me become a stronger, better, he didn't help me become Doritos, right? I was Cheez-Its. And one day I was reading the scriptures and I was just sitting there thinking with God. I was thinking about this, and I normally had frustration in my mind when I would talk to God about this kind of stuff. And I was sitting there pondering on it, and I was thinking about this promise that God makes in the scriptures that, hey, if you bring your weaknesses to me, I'm going to turn them into strengths. And I was going through that, and I was like, God, I tried to do that. I really tried to turn my weaknesses into strengths for that marriage. Why didn't it work? And I was finally approaching it with humility. I wasn't angry. I was just kind of actually asking God. And I had this immediate impression from God. It was a voice in my head. God said, son, I never wanted you to become what she wanted you to become. I wanted you to be what you are. That's what I made you to do. And it was just like oxygen came back in the room and everything started to make sense. I was so in this frame of mind because I'd been conditioned by all these elements inside, including my family, to make her happy. That was my job, was to serve her and do everything I could to validate her and make her happy, that I'd lost sight of who I was. And God was saying, you kept praying for me to change you. I don't want you to be different. I want you to be what I made you to be. All these qualities that she thought was bad about you, these are qualities I gave you to do good with. And it was just this awesome experience where everything started to make so much more sense, and it completely instantaneously mended this like enmity that I felt with God. Like it made everything make more sense. And so when I rolled into that next marriage, I didn't go into that next marriage thinking I had to conform a damn thing. Now I was going in, I was going to be the best I could be. And I recognize I have as many weaknesses as anybody else out there. So I was going in there, I knew I had work to do, but I was not going to be trying to fundamentally change myself for the fucking whims of some chick. Like I was like, you're going to know what you're getting, and if you're not okay with that, this relationship's going to come to an end.
That's cool, yeah.
I'm not trying to chase some fucking
No
moving
doubt.
target.
No doubt. That's cool.
So my question is to you guys: is we're having this masculine talk, not where I'm not trying to throw women under the bus at all.
At
Love and
all.
respect women, but as in a relationship, in a committed relationship with a woman, one of the things that I have found that you can do one of the quickest ways to destroy your connection, your chemistry with a woman, is to basically be a doormat, to do everything she wants, acquiesce, and like give her all this validation and all this like love and attention. She loses respect for you, because at the end of the day, a woman is only going to be attracted to a man she has respect for, and she's only going to respect a man who gives her boundaries. I've just learned this. Like, if you want a woman to respect you, she's got to feel on some level those boundaries. It gives her a sense of security. My man won't tolerate this. My man is a rock here. I can't go up against this. Okay, I can trust this man. Whereas the guy that just lays down and acquiesces to every single thing that she wants, there's no trust there. There's nothing solid to build a relationship in her mind that I've noticed. So as a man, how do we go into these relationships with women that we love and that we have a natural inclination as a man to serve and build up? And basically, we as men want to put our women on pedestals. We want to elevate them. We want to treat them like a freaking princess. But when we do that, it fucking kills the relationship. So how do we maintain that king status while at the same time treating our woman like she's a queen?
I think part of it, if we replace the word ego with boundaries, I think it takes care of the issue maybe that we were talking about.
Oh,
right?
yeah, no doubt.
Where
No doubt.
I speak of ego meaning
No doubt.
something that is detrimental to a
Boundaries.
relationship. I think of boundaries as something that increases and adds to the relationship.
Yeah.
Think of anything in life. any sports, there's rules, right? It's another word for rules is boundaries, right? You have to follow the rules or it's a foul or a flag, right? There's traffic laws. You can't run the red light, otherwise there's consequences. You could hurt somebody or things like that, right? So I think in a relationship, it's the same exact way, where if we remove the ego, it allows us to create boundaries. And when we create boundaries, we create structure. And there's nothing more, just like Adam was saying, there's nothing more that a woman truly needs from her man than structure when it comes to boundaries. You learn from your previous relationship not to be a yes man, not to get walked over. Okay? And when you came into your new relationship now with your wife, it wasn't that you had an ego, it's that you had created boundaries for who you are as a man and what you found acceptable and good boundaries to create a loving relationship on. And so I think that that's like super crucial to the communication aspect of things, is when you set boundaries, and for lack of a better term, when your spouse or significant other knows the rules, that's where the communication gets enhanced. That's where you can start to add to each other. And that's where you can start to grow together. But until us as men actually take the time to set boundaries, and that doesn't mean be a dickhead. That doesn't mean say you'll fucking listen to me no matter what I say. That's not leadership, right? When you walk into a relationship and you have someone that you love and care about and that means the world to you, setting boundaries and giving rules is actually saying, I love you so much that I know how important respect and tolerance and boundaries are in a relationship, that we're going to do this right now. For example, the relationship I'm in, one of the first things that we talked about when it came to communication, she said, one of my rules, one of my boundaries that I'm going to create in this relationship for you, Cam, right? She came to me and said this. She said, I don't care what it is. I want to be the one that you talk to about it. So that immediately lowers my walls and says, it doesn't matter if it's a vulnerable thing. It doesn't matter if it's something that I failed at in life. It doesn't matter if it's a struggle that I'm having in life. It doesn't matter what it is. That is my person. And she has created this boundary, this safe space for me to come to her and communicate with her. And she has given me the authority or the access to be me, to be my authentic self with her. Now that's a boundary. So anything that I'm going through in life, I can now share with her and we can work through it together. And I know I'm going into a judgment-free zone. It's a safe space for me to be vulnerable. It's a safe space for me to communicate. And because of that, then I am more authentic. I am more my true self in my communication. And I've removed the ego because boundaries have already been created that way.
That's good. Dang, Cameron. Showing up, dropping some fire at the fire, bro.
I think that just adding to that, it's possible to do that while you're in a relationship too. Like even if you're past the beginning or the honeymoon stage, right? Like I can't, like my marriage.
You're already in the rabbit hole.
Well, you're already in the rabbit hole. When I started my marriage, like I was a total simp. I was told like, I'll do whatever you want, baby. It's
She put
done.
the strap on and you were just, yes, ma'am.
No. So.
I was just saying what you were thinking, Stone. Tell me.
Oh my gosh, his brain always goes there. Gosh, damn. But when I started my relationship, I was like, man, I got this great woman. She's just a badass and a powerhouse, and like, I can't lose her. And so I immediately went into that. All right, I got to make sure she's happy all the time, otherwise I'm going to be toast. That wasn't true, and in fact, I became a very unhappy person, and because of it. But like, I changed myself, and I didn't ask for permission. I just did that. But I let her know very respectfully, hey, I'm gonna be making some changes, and it's gonna be a lot, not just physical. Like, I need to change who I am from the ground up. And she was very respectful of that, and she understood that. And that didn't mean that there wasn't hiccups along the way, especially like creating these new boundaries, you know, for myself and for her, and kind of learning what those were. But it's possible. If you have a partner you're compatible with, if you have somebody that, you know, is just a solid person, not toxic, like they can move and change too. And they can move and adjust to that new, say you're not Cheez-Its anymore, say you are Doritos now. Like somebody who truly loves you is going to love you for who you become as you become it in your time. And it's not up to them. That's you. And you're going to do the same for them.
And I think that's also key, that it's okay to change from Cheez-Its, Twizzlers to this to that. And what our spouses or significant others are looking for is us to make the change, not them to require it from us, right? And as they see us make the change, just like you were saying, you're saying, hey, there's going to be changes. I'm going to be doing this or speaking this way or moving in this direction. Now it becomes a sense of her not being like, man, I got to lead my man, or I have to take control. Now you're telling her, hey, I recognize what I need to change, or I recognize what needs to be changed, or what boundaries need to be created, and I'm going to make those changes. I'm telling you, there is nothing more sexy to a woman than a man that says, I understand that what needs to be done, and I'm going to go do it, right? Regardless of what it is, truly, unless it's obviously something bad, but like, regardless of what it is, if you're looking to improve your life and make changes that improve the relationship and the communication within that relationship, that woman will look at you and think, that's my king. And I will listen and I will follow and I will support, because I know that he's being proactive in bettering our relationship, in bettering our situation, and making what we have even greater.
So I have two questions. One for you, Sam.
All right, come on.
Actually, no, it's kind of for everybody. So when you first go into a relationship and you're like, I'm going to be everything for this woman, I'm going to do whatever she asks, right? So in your words, that's it. Why are you that way? Like, is it like,
Fear, man.
Like, do you think that you don't think that you can meet somebody else? Yeah, it's like, what is that mentality? Just to be like, I see a chick, and then I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna give her everything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna do everything for her.
I don't think it's because I didn't think I could get anybody else. It's because I fell in love with who she was, and I didn't want to lose that. And she's just badass. She's the best, and she's my best friend. But I learned that, and I was like, man, that's so valuable. And the caliber woman she was, I just couldn't let that go. So the fear of her leaving turned me into a simp, because I don't think I went into the relationship as a simp stone. I think I started off kind of well, and then, when, everything.
Do you think a part of being a simp is the fact that she's not? I'm not making a generalization like that.
Right.
I'm not speaking specifically about you, but when dudes start to acquiesce into everything, right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna be this, that, and the other for this person. And you lose yourself though. So
Mhm.
is she really loving you, or is she loving your representative simply because you're portraying a role that you're really not? Like you're portraying somebody that you're really not.
But I did that. She didn't do
No,
that.
I'm not blaming her. I'm talking about you. I'm not saying it's her fault. I'm
He's saying why do
what is the mentality of
guys do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I think I was just locked in. I was locked in and committed, and I think I thought the way I'd been programmed, the way I'd been raised and brought up, like I thought that like very much what Adam was saying, like the church that we were raised in, like teaches very heavily these ideals, and one of them, unfortunately, is that like you just kind of do as you're told, like make your woman happy. And that's not how I believe the scriptures say it. That's not how I believe it should be taught, but I kind of thought that way. And so like I just kind of lamented into that situation, which, it's, I think, unfortunate a lot of guys do, because they feel the very same way I do.
So I felt like the same what Sam was saying. Like it was a lot of the upbringing that I had that kept me there, and then particularly because she got pregnant early on. So once the kid was in play, I was like, oh, that's what you do. You just go down with the ship. You're the captain at the helm, and whether the ship is sinking or not, you just stand at the helm, bro. Like it's the kids now that matter, and so I really believe that.
Even though the ship is like, I mean,
you're just like the Titanic, dude. I'm going all the way down to the bottom, bro. Peace out, motherfuckers. Your boy is gone. Like that's how I felt on a daily basis.
so he on the pole in the water.
But what I learned, I mean, we're having this conversation. It's I learned one thing though, because I was conditioned to believe again that my job was to make her happy, and I think happy wife, happy life is the biggest load of bullshit.
Of
It's
course,
just like,
that is.
it makes me so angry because how destructive that mentality is. Like, the relationship is centered around the wife's emotions. Okay, so what are we chasing? Some moving goalpost nonstop? Because most women, let's be honest, most women are not emotionally intelligent. They have a lot of emotion, so they claim to be emotionally intelligent, but they're not actually emotionally intelligent. So if your job is to make your wife happy, you're going to constantly be chasing this moving target. So what I realized coming into the second marriage that I had is, one, my job is not to make her happy. It's not my job.
At all.
Ever. It's
At all.
not my job to make her happy. My job is to be the best version of myself, and for me to present that to her, and for her to be the best version of herself. And now we can connect and make each other better, but she's not looking for me to fill some hole in her life, and she's not filling some hole in my life. Now it's very synergistic. It's very healthy because we're both coming to the relationship not needing something from the other person. It's more like, I just like you. You happen to be cool. I actually genuinely like this bag of Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its is my favorite snack. I'm gonna eat Cheez-Its.
Damn.
Like, wow, it's novel.
garage
You
full of
picked up
Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its and you didn't change your mind. You still like Cheez-Its because guess what, motherfuckers? I wasn't gonna change. I'm gonna just stay as a bag of Cheez-Its. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. So like, that was a really important lesson for me. Again, my wife is the most important relationship outside of the relationship I have with myself. My wife is the most important relationship that I have. She's even more important than my relationship with my kids, which is hard to say sometimes because we're so connected to our kids. But me building that relationship with her is important, so I'm not shortchanging anything. I just came into this relationship making sure she understood, I'm not here to make you happy. You have got to make yourself happy.
Self-happy.
I've got to
No
make myself
question.
happy.
Ain't
And if we're
no
both working on
question.
ourselves to get ourselves healthy and in fighting shape, guess what? We're going to have a relationship that's healthy and in fighting shape.
Well,
Stone,
I
I've
think
got I've got one I want to share. I've been thinking about your question that you asked earlier for like 20 minutes. Like, I haven't heard a word that anybody said because I can't stop thinking about this question.
Let's go.
So you asked the question, why do we show up a certain way as men when we're with the men?
Yeah.
And we show up a different way when we're with our woman, right?
Yeah.
I think it's this. I think it's that if you think about the relationships that you have with men, okay? Is Adam a relationship that you have?
Sure.
Does Adam keep the commitments that he makes to you?
Absolutely.
Does he respect you?
Yep.
Do you trust him?
Yep.
Okay. So if we're in the home and we're the rock, we're the king, and we keep making commitments to our wife and our kids that we keep breaking, do you think she's going to reciprocate and behave the same way that we behave with our buddies that do that? If you have a buddy that never keeps his commitments, is never there when he says he's going to be there, that you don't trust, that you don't respect, like, that relationship is it's gonna fade away. And you're probably not gonna be cool, calm, and collected and have these kind of conversations with those kind of people, right?
Sure.
So for me, I feel like it's when we're with guys that we trust, because I'm the first guy to cut a dude out of my circle if he stops contributing to the relationship about 50%, and I'm giving him my other 50%. If he stops making and keeping commitments, if I can't trust him, if I can't rely on him, right, and I can't respect him, and I think that's the same in the home. So like, we can't expect our significant others to behave a certain way, and vice versa. We shouldn't feel like we need to behave a certain way towards them if there's not that trust in making and keeping commitments to each other.
So what
Work,
happens?
Tyler. That's good.
So what happens though? I like to ask the question because I like to kind of push back on this just a little bit,
Go ahead, man.
because I like, all right, what happens when you show up and you really are a king, and you really do keep your commitments to her, and you really do keep your promises to her, and you really do pay all the bills, and you really do lay her down and put her to sleep at night. You know what I mean? What happens then? Do you get what I'm saying? Because
If what?
sometimes in a relationship,
That's a great question.
Yeah, you can
Answer
yeah,
that.
let's stop right there, man. No,
That's good.
sometimes in a relationship, what tends to happen with women is one, you're never going to, one of the things that I've learned in life is you're never going to, it's never going to be perfect. If you set it up for perfection, every day we clicking on all cylinders, eventually that's not gonna click. If you set it up for ideal, then it's different. It's ideal that we work this way. It's ideal that we talk this way. It's ideal this, and that. What tends to happen is women, they don't, it's difficult for a man is structured. He's really structured and can be very, very disciplined. And when you're a king already, and you do come in when you leave work, you do cook, you do mow the lawn, you do hedge the grass, you do all of that. And then there's this rift from your significant other. That rift, I believe, has always been caused by the inability to consistently keep up with that king. And that's where the rift starts coming in, because most people will start setting up in their head that you're not perfect. But you're forgetting that we set it up as ideal to be this way. It's only ideal. It's not perfect. And so when you mama, you're losing track that it's not structured to be like this perfect thing. It's just ideal for us to be this way constantly, over and over and over. People start setting it up in their head that it's perfect. And it's like, no, you're just forgetting that we're not perfect. That's all that's going on. And if you can remind people that, yo, look, the system is not perfect, yo. Ain't nothing in this world created perfect, nothing. And if you can consistently tell your girl that and explain that to her over and over, like, yo, mama, like, I think you just forgetting all of this. Like, it ain't set up for me to, it's not you looking at me like I'm trying to be perfect, and I ain't trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be the ideal person.
So, look, I have one more question. We have to wrap up soon.
Sorry about that.
So when you said that, you had said that is it your wife now? Or your
My girlfriend. Mm-hmm.
She set it up for you, created a safe space for you.
Yeah.
Right? Which I find like super important.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a hard time literally like being completely vulnerable with your significant other? Because all of our lives, it's just me, where, okay, I compartmentalize.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things that I talk to, my wife about, but then I don't feel like she can relate to other things that I may be going through. So that's when I'll talk to Sam. He said,
Yeah.
you guys,
Yep.
So do you practice that and try to tell her everything, or do you still withhold information because you don't think that she can relate to it?
That's a great question. And I think the way I handle that is I try and honor her request by still communicating with her. I think having a conversation and communicating are very different things. There is communication that I'll have with her and say, hey, I'm going through this at work. I'm dealing with these issues or these struggles, and I'm working through them. Just want you to be aware, because my energy or my attitude might be off or things like that, just so you're aware. But then I might turn to Adam or Tyler and actually have the conversation with them about the actual issue, what's going on, because I know they can relate better with me about that, right? But as long as I communicate with her about what's going on, that's what she needs. She needs to feel like I'm not keeping things from her. She needs to feel like I'm not including her. And she needs to feel like she's involved so that she can be supportive. Whether or not I have the conversation with her or not, at least she looks at me and says, okay, I'm aware of what he's going through. He may not want to bring that to me and have that conversation with me, but I'm aware of it and I can be supportive of it. So for example, if I say that to her and I'm going through something with work, which is a real life thing right now with me. I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. She knows that I've had the conversation with Tyler, and we've gone through it. So now she comes back around and says, hey, how you feeling about this? Did you and Tyler have a chance to talk about it? What did he say? How are you feeling about this? And now then I'm coming to her in the safe space, being able to be able to say, yeah, we actually did talk, and this is what we talked about, and here's what I'm feeling about it, and here's what I'm thinking about it. What are your thoughts about it? So knowing that she can't fully relate to the situation or the subject maybe, or the thing that I'm going through, communicating with her makes her a part of it. And for the women, that's what a lot of women just need. They just want to be involved so they can support. Does that make sense, right? Because that's what they truly want to do. They want to support their king. They want to help us be our best selves. But when we don't even communicate with them, then that's when the questions start to come in. Why isn't he communicating? Why is he grumpy? What's going on? I don't even know. He doesn't talk to me. But as long as we communicate, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm feeling. They don't actually need the conversation.
They just
They
need a vibe
just-
check.
That's actually
They just need to be involved in the situation so that they can support and so that they can give us what we need, because that is by nature what they want to do.
And if you
Right.
don't, it gives them the opportunity to build the story about what's happening with you.
Yes.
And then it's like, wait a minute, you got it all wrong. I should have just talked to you about this in the
Yeah.
first place.
And they could come back and say, you don't trust me, you don't talk to me because you don't trust me, and they might overthink the whole situation. And in all reality, if we just took the time to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I'm dealing with this, or I have some real insecurities about this situation in life, it's not that we need them to answer or to give us answers or solve the problem for us. We might have our brothers to do that, or our parents to do that, or somebody else to help us through that conversation. But as long as they're involved in the communication, that's where the reciprocation can begin to evolve. And then when it comes back, we end it with them. And we allow them to be a part of the solution. And that creates a bond, that creates a love, that creates a trust that then grows that relationship to where now she doesn't feel like she necessarily needs to know all the details. She just needs to know the situation.
Okay, I got one last question because we're wrapping up. That was something really good. We're going to finish up with this. Okay, so at what point do you hold? We've talked about boundaries. We've talked about vulnerability. Okay, at what point do you hold a boundary? So my man Stone here said earlier today that he would put on a sailor suit and wear Timberlands if his wife thought that was the best thing to do in bed. I just thought Stone in like a tailor or a sailor suit just freaking.
You have
That
them?
shit killed me, bro. I was literally in the gym crying when he told me that shit. I was in the middle of trying to work out. He's like, bro, I put on a sailor suit and put my Timberlands on, and I would do whatever she asked me to do. So as long as there were some other stipulations. So that's my point. What is the long as? In a relationship, we have we go into a relationship. I think so I'm gonna preface this a little bit more. I'm gonna put a little more meat on the bones, all right? So hold that sailor image of Stone in your mind with Timberlands on.
Yo, are they tied up?
So not just tied up, he's got that ball in his mouth, bro. He's got that
How far do we want to take this?
take it as far as you want, bro. We sit around the fire, we just talk whatever we want to say.
20% right now.
So here's my theory, or my approach, I should say. I think that it is our obligation in a relationship to do whatever our spouse wants, as long as it's not deprecating or disrespectful to ourselves, right? So if my wife wants me to role play that I'm the college football quarterback and I'm in detention and that's what we're gonna do, that's what I'm gonna do. It's not disrespectful to me. Okay, I'm throwing this out because maybe that's happened, maybe it hasn't. I don't talk about that part. I'm open about most stuff. We're gonna keep that. Okay, that has happened for sure. I was in detention, all right, like a whole scenario.
Bad boy.
Buffalo Skull Thong.
Oh, whatever. I've done that before as well. So, my opinion is like, hey, if that's your preference and it's not an attack on who I am, it's not a disrespect, like you need to change who you are to Doritos, right? It's just like, baby, I want this from you. Cool. Okay. There's no disrespect there. I'm happy to accommodate that. And I think, like, for example, I hear this from a lot of women, and I've seen this a lot, where women will say, I just don't like having sex.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then you don't like being married, right? Like, what part of like this doesn't make sense? Like, I don't necessarily like going to the gym, but I know that if I go to the gym, it's going to make me healthy. That's what I got to do. That's the price I got to pay to have a healthy body, a healthy physique. If I want to be in a relationship with a man as a woman, then it doesn't matter whether that's your natural inclination or preference. That's what you do to have a healthy relationship with your spouse, and vice versa. I'm not just putting this on women. As a man, you've got to make sure your woman feels like she's in fighting shape to be intimate with you physically, which means you're gassing her emotional state up. Like women have to feel emotionally. This is the odd paradox. Is women, for them to be in the mood to be physically intimate, have to first feel emotional intimacy. Men, to feel emotional intimacy, first have to feel physical intimacy. So here's one of these like critical like issues in a relationship where there's often a disconnect. Is a woman is waiting for the man to step up emotionally, and the man is waiting for the woman to step up physically before they can find that really intimate, profound connection that happens in a meaningful monogamous relationship. And so both people are playing this weird game of chicken, like, I'm not going to do this until you satisfy my emotional needs, or I'm not going to do this until you satisfy my physical needs. And now you have this really, really toxic relationship where both people are like holding out on each other, waiting to manipulate, trying to manipulate the other person's behavior. So my question, that was long-winded, is how do you set boundaries? We're going to close out on this. How do you set boundaries, and how do you maintain those boundaries in a healthy relationship?
So what you just said, like literally, you took ego, pride, and communication. That was all up in there, right? When the woman is over here, dude's over here, and where do you find the happy medium, right? The ego, the pride, and then the lack of communication is why you still get the toxic relationship. Right? So anyway, I think the boundaries are set just through communication, to be honest with you. So once again, if you like what you like and you need what you need, right? You express that. I think if you're going to have a healthy sexual relationship, you have to express exactly what it is that you're into.
So she wants you to dress up like a Boy Scout. You're putting merit badges on yourself?
If that's what it is, that's what it is, bro. Like, I don't find it demeaning. It's my girl. It's my wife. You know what I mean? Like, the fuck? I don't give a shit. Nobody else is seeing that shit. You know? Like, and so what? You know what I mean? Like,
Bro,
so
if
what?
you ever put a Boy Scout suit on, you better take a picture and share it with us.
Yo.
No shame. No shame. Yo. As long as it doesn't involve penetrating me, I don't give a fuck. Like, let's just keep it 100. Like,
Nah, I'm with you, son.
You know what I mean?
know
Like,
what
why would I care? Like,
I know what
if
you're
you
saying.
start to make people feel like this shit is nasty, then they're gonna be shut down, right? If a woman is into whatever she may be into, but if you start to make her feel like, oh my God, if I see this dude, he's gonna think that, oh, this is gross, this is that. Well, whatever you're into, just let me know, and then we can figure it the fuck out. Once again, as long as it doesn't include.
So penetration is your boundary.
Oh my God.
That's where you draw the line.
What percent gay are you, bro?
Zero.
How do you guys feel about that? Do you
It's
feel that's
impossible.
authentic?
One, that's impossible. 2%.
I tell you, to be honest with you, to piggyback, for lack of better expression, to like jump on what the guys are talking about as far as that goes. You know, I'm a barber. No, that's not what I typically tell people. I typically tell people I'm a stylist because I don't just cut hair, I create a style for you.
Might even say you're an artist, bro.
You know what I mean? Well, I mean, you know, as it relates to beauty topics, I always just tell people I'm a stylist. But I have clients that'll come in and be like, yeah, my wife sent me here. Here's a picture. Here's how she want the haircut. This and that. This and that. And I'm like, yo, son, I'm gonna give you something better than that right there, because see, this gonna be your ticket to getting some pussy. See?
You're making him that crispy,
Yes,
huh? He's
sir.
going out there
See?
dangerous.
Because she sent you in here with a look of how she want the intimacy to look to her, the image of it. And she may have even gotten this image from Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? But she's saying, I don't want Leonardo DiCaprio. I want you to kind of look like Leonardo DiCaprio with your haircut like this a little bit.
So check this out.
You know what I mean? So I just let me finish real quick. Oh, go ahead.
You know, answer the question. Answer his question. Where are the boundaries when it comes to your relationship? You in your relationship. the boundaries, are there boundaries, and what are those boundaries for you to where you just can't cross them? Like you're not gonna go there, or I'm gonna go there, or I'm gonna do whatever she asks.
Well, like growing up, like all of my boundaries are set by all of the people that set the precedence before me of things that just would not be tolerated
So what are
as would.
what are those?
So I'm just gonna say all of this because I'm masculine. I'm masculine. Everything that's associated, and I ain't talking about no toxic masculinity. I'm talking about how I actually look at myself in relation to intimacy with a woman, or 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 building up to the intimacy in a relationship with your woman. So what I mean by that is I don't ever want you to do anything to me or suggest anything to me that could potentially destroy your image of this masculine guy. So those things run like parallel to things associated with homosexuality. I'm not. Nah, none. You know what I mean? Because I don't want that to like destroy. That could derail your thoughts of me.
Okay, let
Over time,
me,
that could like.
let me jam on this. I'm going to say 3 things that I think maybe fit what you're talking about in masculinity. I'll tell you what my 3 things are. I can boil them down to 3 boundaries that I have in my relationship. The first is respect. The second is trust, and the third is accountability. Those are my boundaries. It's the same boundaries I expect to have on myself. If I can't trust you, we don't have a relationship.
No doubt.
If you don't respect me, we don't have a relationship.
No
If
doubt.
there's no accountability, we can't grow a relationship. So it's those 3 things. If I don't have those 3 things in a relationship, then it's not going to work. I know that those are 3 poison pills, that if those are broken, this relationship, as much as I may want it to work, it doesn't matter how desperate I am for it to work, it's ultimately not going to get to a conclusion where we're in a healthy, happy relationship. So I just don't tolerate those things. And I'll give you one example of this. It's kind of personal. We can close out with this because we're out of time. We've been here late. When I first started dating my wife now, she'd been single for a long time. You know Kylie. Like, she'd been in the single game for a long time, dated a lot of guys, highly in demand by a lot of guys, right? So I had to kind of elbow my way at the table, like kind of work my way in there and work some magic, because she had a lot of guys that were in pursuit of her, and she'd had a previous relationship with guys that she was friends with and whatever else, and she was single, and that was fine. When we got into a relationship, one of the things that I had is like, you can't continue a relationship with guys that you've been in a previous relationship with.
Right.
It's a level of respect for me, and it's also a level of trust. Not that I'm even saying that I distrust you, I distrust the situation, right? It's a bad situation. If you're DMing and communicating with guys you've had a relationship with in the past, not only does that disrespect me on some level, but it's also like a lack of trust. So I had this communication with her. We started dating, and one of her ex-boyfriends was still messaging her. Like, they would DM. And it was harmless. It wasn't like romantic or anything like that. But this guy, I knew what he was. I knew what a guy is doing. He still loved her. Like, she broke up with him. I know exactly what he's doing. He's looking for a chink in the armor. He's looking for a chink in the relationship.
Yeah.
He's looking to make his move.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I'm not even mad about it. I just know what the fuck's going on, right? And she's acting like she doesn't. I don't know why he's messaging me. I'm like, okay, whether you know that or not, first of all, I don't believe you don't know. I don't believe that. Girls play dumb that. They play that dumb role all the time, right? But I'm like, no, I think you do know what's going on. But I had a conversation with her when we were dating. I was like, look, if we're going to get into a serious relationship, just so you know, that has to go. For me, that's a boundary that I have for me. Like, I'm being clear with you. We get into a relationship. She understands, cool. We get into a relationship, cool. Get into a relationship. Partway into the relationship comes up that she's still DMing this guy. And she shows me the messages. They're harmless in the sense of, like, they're not romantic or anything. I know what the fuck's going on. I'm like, I was like, listen, if this can't keep happening, like, you've got to be able to, like, draw a line for yourself. I get that you feel this empathy and connection with people and you want to have, like, this friendship and stuff like that, but it doesn't work in a relationship with a man. I am a king. I'm a good man. I'm going to take care of you. If you want to be in this relationship with me, I'm the only dude in your life. There's not other dudes giving you attention. There's not other dudes feeding your ego or whatever else. It's just me. I came home. This is a personal experience. I came home one night and we had been married for a short period of time, and I felt like something was off. I just felt like something was off. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know. I, like, got back from a work trip and I was like, oh, it doesn't feel right. I checked her phone for the first time ever in my life. The first and only time I ever checked her phone. I picked up her phone, I went through it, and I saw these DMs with this guy. Okay? Totally harmless in the sense of they weren't romantic. It wasn't like, let's meet up and hang out. It was like talking about work, talking about this, and he was the one instigating it, and she was being a sweetheart replying. When that happened, I had a conversation with her the next day. And I said, this relationship isn't going to work. Now, we had just been married. I had just gone through a divorce. This is not a comfortable position for me to be in. This is not a place I want to be in. This isn't something I'm taking lightly. But I had to draw that line. This is what I'd learned from my previous marriage. I had to draw that line quick, and I had to draw it hard, like if this was going to work. And I was ready to walk away and step away at that point because of those two things, a lack of respect and a lack of trust in that. And so I was ready to leave. And after that, everything changed. She understood that. It was finally like whatever got through. And it was like, okay, I'm not ever going to do that again. And it's never happened since then. But that's how serious I was about keeping the boundaries that I set, that if it was going to be a breach of those boundaries, that the relationship was over no matter where we were at it.